The phone rang at 12:17 in the morning. I know because I'd just looked at the alarm clock by my bed, wondering why I couldn't sleep. 41 years married to my late wife, and I still slept on the right side of the bed. Old habits. I almost didn't answer. At my age, 68 last March, a phone call after midnight usually means somebody died. My first thought was my brother in Tucson. He'd had a heart attack 2 summers back, and I'd been waiting for the second one ever since. But the screen said my younger boy was calling, the one who joined the Bureau 6 years out of college and now worked out of the Philadelphia field office. We talked maybe once a week, usually Sundays, never at midnight. I picked up, "Pop, listen to me carefully. I need you to do exactly what I say." His voice was the kind of calm you only learn in jobs where people get hurt if you panic. I sat up in bed. "Are you all right? What happened?" "I'm fine. You need to turn off every light in your house. Right now. Walk away from the windows. Don't answer the door for anyone. Don't open your laptop. And Pop, do not tell your daughter or her husband anything I'm about to say." My mouth went dry. My older girl and her husband had moved into the guest suite downstairs 8 months ago. Said they were saving up to buy a place. Said they wanted to be close to me after my wife passed. "Son, you're scaring the hell out of me." "I know. I'm sorry. But I need you to trust me. I'm getting in the car right now. I'll be there in 40 minutes. Just stay quiet. Stay upstairs. And whatever you hear, do not come out of your bedroom until I knock on your door 3 times. 3 times, Pop. Anything else is not me." He hung up. I sat there for a long minute, listening to the house. My place is a 4-bedroom colonial in a township about 30 miles outside Pittsburgh. I built most of the back half myself in the 80s, when I was still working as a structural welder for the railroad. Solid bones. Quiet. Too quiet that night. I got up, patted across the carpet in my undershirt and sweatpants, reached for the lamp, and then stopped. He'd said, "Turn off the lights." He hadn't said turn any on. I left the bedroom dark. I cracked the door an inch and listened. Down below, in the guest suite where my older girl and her husband slept, I heard voices. Not loud. Just the murmur of a man's voice and a woman answering. 2 o'clock conversation after midnight. Not the kind of murmur you have when you're half asleep. The kind you have when you're working something out. I closed the bedroom door as soft as I could and locked it. The lock was original to the house. I'd never had a reason to use it before. Then I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark and waited. You have to understand something about how I've been living that last year. After my wife passed, I went through what you'd expect. Lost about 20 pounds. Couldn't eat. Couldn't sleep. My older girl, she'd been the one to step in. Drove up from Cleveland every other weekend at first. Made sure I was eating. Cleaned out my wife's closet when I couldn't bring myself to do it. I was grateful. Truly. So when she and her husband, a man named, well, I'll just call him my son-in-law, suggested they move in for a while, just until we get on our feet, I said yes. I said it gratefully. I helped them carry boxes up the driveway. The first month was fine. Then, small things started. My son-in-law took over the bills. Said it would be easier if everything was on one account so they could chip in for utilities. I let him. He had a head for numbers. Worked in what he called consulting, though when I asked what he consulted on, the answer was always vague. Something about contracts. Something about real estate paperwork. He was 36. Wore nice shoes. Drove a leased SUV that he said he needed for clients. Then the cameras went in. He told me it was for my safety. An old guy living in a house this size, anything could happen. A fall, a stroke. He installed 2 in the kitchen, 1 in the living room, 1 in the hallway by my bedroom, and 1 in the workshop out back where I kept my woodworking tools. He showed me the app on his phone. "See, Pop? We can check on you any time." He'd started calling me Pop. My own girl had called me Daddy her whole life. Suddenly, she was using Pop, too, like they'd agreed on it. I told myself it was sweet. I told myself I was lucky to have kids who cared. Then my friends stopped coming around. My old buddy from the railroad, a fellow I'd worked side by side with for 26 years, called one afternoon and said my son-in-law had told him I wasn't feeling well, that I was getting confused, that maybe it was better if visits waited. I told my buddy I was fine. I told him to come over Sunday for lunch. He came. My son-in-law sat with us the whole time, asked my buddy strange questions about whether he'd noticed me being forgetful. My buddy looked at me funny, left after an hour. He didn't come back. Then my own doctor. I'd been seeing the same fellow for 18 years. Suddenly my older girl was telling me he'd retired and she'd found me a new one. A specialist. The new doctor's office was an hour away. They drove me. They sat in the room. The new doctor asked me to count backwards from 100 by sevens. I did it. He asked me what day of the week it was. I told him Thursday, and it was. He asked me to draw a clock. I drew it. He frowned at the paper for a long time and wrote something down. On the drive home, I asked my girl what the new doctor's specialty was. She said he was a geriatrician. I asked why I needed one of those. Daddy, we just want to make sure you're okay. She wouldn't look at me when she said it. That night was the first time I really started paying attention. I went out to the workshop the next morning. I'd built that workshop myself, 20 years back, when I was still on the railroad. After I retired at 62, I started building furniture. Tables, rocking chairs, a cradle for my younger boy when his first kid was born. Hands-on work. Kept me sane through my wife's illness. There was a camera in the corner up by the rafters. I'd helped him install it. But there was a dead zone I knew about, behind the lathe, where the lens couldn't reach because of the shop light fixture. I'd noticed it the first day, just naturally. The way a man notices the corners of his own home. I started doing my real thinking back there. What I figured out over the next 4 months was this. My son-in-law had taken over my mail. He'd been opening the bank statements. He had a key to my safe deposit box, given to him by my girl, who'd been added to the box years ago for emergencies. I'd never thought about it again. And 6 weeks before that midnight phone call, my older girl had asked me to sign some papers. Sitting at the kitchen table, coffee cups between us, she pushed a stack across to me. Daddy, it's just a power of attorney, in case something happens, so we can help with bills, doctors, that kind of thing. Standard stuff. I almost signed. My pen was on the paper. Then I thought of my younger boy, the one in the bureau. I'd raised both my kids to be cautious about paperwork. So I said, "Honey, let me have my brother in Tucson take a look at it. He's a notary. He'll know if it's standard." Her face changed. Just a flicker. Then she smiled. "Of course, Daddy. No rush." I never gave the papers to my brother. I locked them in the workshop, behind the lathe in an old cigar box where I used to keep finishing nails. That same week, I started keeping a notebook. A small one, the kind you can fit in a back pocket. I wrote down everything. The day my checking account had a $5,000 withdrawal I hadn't authorized. The afternoon my son-in-law took a phone call out on the porch, and I heard him say the words court date and competency hearing. The Tuesday my girl told me she'd canceled my subscription to the local paper to save money. That was the paper my wife and I had read together every morning for 30 years. I wrote it all down. I kept the notebook in the cigar box, too. And then, 4 weeks before that midnight call, I did something I'm still not entirely proud of, even now. I went to the public library, the one in the next town over. I told my girl I was going to the hardware store. At the library, I used one of their computers to send my younger boy an email. Not a long one, just a few lines. "Something is wrong here. Your sister and her husband are doing something I don't understand. They've taken over my mail and my bank account. They've isolated me from my friends and my old doctor. I don't know who else to ask. I love you. Don't call the house phone. Don't email back. Just please, if you can, look into it." He must have started looking the very next day, because when he called me at 12:17 in the morning 4 weeks later, he already knew everything. So there I sat in the dark, locked bedroom, waiting. It was about 35 minutes after the call when I heard a car pull into the driveway. No headlights. I heard the front door open, very quietly. My son had a key. I heard the soft footfalls of more than one person. Then voices downstairs. My girl's voice, surprised. My son-in-law's voice, sharper. Then another man's voice I didn't recognize. Then a woman's voice, identifying herself as a federal agent, calm and clear, telling my son-in-law to keep his hands where she could see them. I sat in the dark and listened to my son-in-law try to talk his way out of it for about 90 seconds before he stopped trying. 3 knocks on my bedroom door. I opened it. My younger boy stood there in a bureau windbreaker, looking older than he had a year ago. He hugged me. Hard. Then he stepped back and said, "Pop, you're going to need to sit down. There's a lot to tell you." We went down to the kitchen. My son-in-law was in handcuffs at the dining table, with 2 agents on either side of him. My older girl was on the couch with a female agent, crying, her hands shaking so hard she couldn't hold the cup of water they'd given her. My son sat me down at the kitchen island. He poured me a glass of water. He told me, in plain words, what my son-in-law had been doing. His real name wasn't even what he told us when he married my girl. He'd legally changed it after a fraud conviction in another state. Almost 11 years back, he'd been part of a ring that targeted older homeowners across 3 states. Forged signatures on quitclaim deeds. Reverse mortgage applications using the homeowner's information. Powers of attorney signed under what looked like duress or diminished capacity. The Bureau had been working the case for almost 2 years. 19 victims confirmed. 3 of them had lost their homes before the families realized what was happening. My son-in-law had targeted my girl 5 years ago at a wedding in Cleveland. She didn't know. She'd really believed she was just marrying a charming guy who worked in consulting. But somewhere along the line, she'd figured out enough. The competency papers. The new doctor, who, it turned out, my son-in-law had a financial relationship with through a shell company. My girl had known about the doctor. She'd known about the power of attorney. She'd known they were planning to file for guardianship. She hadn't known about the forgery ring. The Bureau was clear about that. As far as they could tell, she'd believed her husband when he said it was all legal. She believed they were just helping themselves to what was coming to them anyway. She believed that I was getting old and confused and that this was the kind thing to do for everyone. I sat at my kitchen island at 1:30 in the morning and listened to my younger boy lay out my older girl's choices to me. And I felt something I have never felt in 68 years on this earth. I felt my heart stop loving someone in real time. I don't mean I stopped caring whether she lived or died. I'll always care about that. I mean the soft place I'd carried for her since she was 3 days old. The soft place a father carries that nothing is supposed to touch. I felt that soft place harden right there at the kitchen counter, and I knew it wasn't coming back. They took my son-in-law out around 2 in the morning. My girl wasn't arrested that night. They told her she'd be contacted, she was a witness, she shouldn't try to leave the area, and she should hire a lawyer. She sat on the couch with her face in her hands. After the agents left, my son walked back into the kitchen and asked me what I wanted to do. I told him I wanted her out of the house by morning. He nodded. He didn't try to talk me out of it. She came into the kitchen around 4. Her makeup was gone. She looked 20 years older than she had at dinner the night before. She sat across from me at the island and said, "Daddy." I let the words sit there. "Daddy, I didn't know about the other people. I swear to God. But you knew about me." She didn't answer. "You knew about the doctor. You knew about the papers. You knew what the power of attorney was for. You knew what guardianship means. You sat at this counter and looked me in the eye and told me it was standard. He said you were going to lose it all anyway. He said someone would take advantage if it wasn't us. He said we were protecting you. You believed that. I wanted to believe it. I drank my water. I set the glass down. You have until 8 in the morning to take what's yours and leave my house. Whatever you can fit in your car. The rest, I'll mail you. I don't want to see you again until I tell you I'm ready. And I don't know if I will be. I don't know if I ever will be. Right now, looking at you, I don't recognize my own daughter. She cried. She begged. She got down on the kitchen floor at one point. I made myself watch her because I needed to remember it. Then I stood up, walked upstairs to my bedroom, locked the door behind me, and lay down on top of the covers with my clothes on. I didn't sleep. I listened to her packing for 4 hours. She left at 7:43. The next 6 months were the slowest of my life. Slower than the year my wife was dying. Slower even than the year after. My son-in-law was charged with 11 federal counts, including wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. The full ring had operated across Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. Total estimated losses to victims over the 6 years the Bureau had been able to document came in just under $3 million. My case alone had been close to $140,000 in withdrawn funds, plus what they were trying to set up with the guardianship and the eventual sale of my house, which would have netted them maybe $400,000 more. I hired a lawyer through a referral from my son, a woman about my age, sharp as a tack, who'd done elder financial abuse cases for 20 years. She filed civil claims against my son-in-law on my behalf and a separate civil claim against my older girl for the funds she'd benefited from, knowingly or not. My girl had no money to pay, but the judgment would follow her. My lawyer warned me. Civil judgment against your own daughter. Are you sure? I was sure. It will sit on her credit for the rest of her working life. She won't be able to buy a house. She'll have to disclose it in any financial application. It will define a significant portion of how she lives the next 2 decades. Good, I said. And I meant it. Not because I wanted her to suffer. Because I wanted her to remember. Every time she filled out a form. Every time a creditor pulled her record. Every time she had to explain to a landlord why her file looked the way it did. I wanted her to remember what she had been part of. Then I went home and sat in my workshop and cried for 2 hours over a half-built end table. Both things were true at the same time. I changed the locks myself. Took me an afternoon. I'd done locks before, back when the kids were little and we lost a key at a state park and I had to rekey the whole house Sunday night. I also installed a deadbolt on the inside of my bedroom door. My son told me the cameras my son-in-law had put in were probably part of how the Bureau had built its case, so we left them in place during the investigation, with the agreement that the Bureau was the only one accessing the feed. After the indictment came down, I took every camera out myself and threw them in a 5-gallon bucket. I drove the bucket to the township dump. I watched a man push them into the compactor with the side of his bulldozer. I stood there until the metal stopped flexing. The cigar box behind the lathe got handed over to the Bureau as evidence. I'd kept everything. The notebook with all the dates, the unsigned power of attorney papers, photos I'd taken with a cheap disposable camera I'd bought at a drugstore, of paperwork my son-in-law had left out on the desk in the guest suite when he thought I was asleep, bank statements I'd retrieved from the recycling bin and dried out on a towel and photographed page by page. The federal prosecutor told me my evidence had materially advanced the case. I didn't really know what that meant until the sentencing memo came out, and they cited my notebook 3 separate times. My son-in-law took a plea deal 8 months after the arrest. 14 years in federal prison, restitution of just over $2 million, joint and several with 2 co-conspirators. He'll be in his early 50s when he gets out. Owing money to people he stole from until the day he dies. My girl was never charged criminally. The U.S. Attorney's Office determined there wasn't enough to prove she knew about the broader fraud. But the civil judgment against her, in my case, came back at $68,000, payable in monthly installments of $410 over 14 years. Her lawyer tried to negotiate it down. Mine wouldn't move. Neither would I. She wrote me a letter at one point, about 3 months after the arrest. Long one. 6 pages, handwritten. I read it twice. Then I put it in a drawer in the workshop, next to the cigar box. I didn't write back. She wrote another one 4 months after that. I read it once, put it in the drawer. A third one came around the 1-year mark. I didn't open it for 2 weeks. When I finally did, I sat in the workshop and read it slow. She wasn't asking for forgiveness in that one. She was just telling me what her life looked like. She was working at a hotel front desk in a town outside Cleveland. She was living in a studio apartment. She was paying the installments on time. She was in therapy. She had stopped trying to explain herself. That one, I almost wrote back to. I didn't. Not yet. My younger boy came up most weekends that first year. Sometimes with his wife, sometimes with his kids. We'd grill out back in the summer. In the winter, we sat in the workshop with the space heater on, and he washed me sand. I taught my granddaughter, who was 8 that year, how to use a hand plane. She was a natural. Steady hands. Patient. The house felt big for a while. Then it felt right again. I went through my wife's closet, finally, the one I hadn't been able to touch. I gave away most of her clothes. I kept her wedding dress and her favorite sweater, the green one she wore for 30 winters, and I kept a shoebox of her letters from when we were dating. The rest went to a women's shelter 2 towns over. I started having my old buddy from the railroad over for Sunday lunch again. He came every week. We didn't talk about what had happened much. He'd worked 38 years on freight cars. He knew the difference between things you talk about and things you just sit with. He just kept showing up. About 15 months after the arrest, I stopped at a little flower stand outside the grocery store. The woman running it was about my age, widowed, used to teach 3rd grade. We got to talking. I bought a bunch of yellow daisies I didn't need. I went back the next week. Then the week after that. I'm not going to tell you that part. That part is mine. What I will tell you is this. A man my age, after a certain point, you think you know what the rest of your life looks like. You've buried your wife. You've raised your kids. You've put in your years on the job. You think the story's mostly told, and there are just chapters left to file away neatly. And then one of your own children walks into your kitchen with a stack of papers and a careful smile, and you find out the story isn't done. You find out you still have to fight. You find out the people you would have died for are not always the people who would have done the same for you. And you find out something else too. You find out that at 68 years old, you are not too old, not too tired, not too sad, not too broken, to defend what is yours. I'm 70 now. The civil judgment installments come into my checking account on the 8th of every month. $410. I don't spend it. I put every one of those payments into an account I set up for my younger boy's 2 kids. College fund. They'll never know where the money came from. They don't need to. My son-in-law is in a federal facility in Pennsylvania. He has 13 years and 4 months left to serve. I don't think about him much anymore. He's just a name on court documents now. A consequence working itself out. My girl is 51. She still lives in that studio apartment outside Cleveland. The hotel promoted her to night manager last spring. She sends me a card on my birthday and one at Christmas. I've started sending them back, just my name signed at the bottom. No letter. Not yet. But maybe. I built a long oak table last winter. 12 feet. Could seat 14 people. My younger boy laughed when he saw it and asked who I was planning to feed. I told him I wasn't sure yet, but I wanted to have the table ready, in case the answer ever changed. The woman from the flower stand came over for Sunday lunch last week. She brought a pie. Sat down at the new table like she'd been sitting there her whole life. We ate. We talked. My buddy from the railroad came by for coffee after, and the 3 of us sat at one end of that big oak table while the afternoon light came in the window. There were 9 empty chairs. I looked at them for a long time. Then I got up and poured another cup of coffee, and I went back to the conversation, and I let the empty chairs stay empty. For now. For now. Some doors a man closes for good. Some he just keeps locked, and waits to see if anyone learns how to knock the right way. I'm still waiting, but I'm not waiting in the dark anymore. I've thought a lot about how I ended up sitting on the edge of my own bed at midnight. in a house I built with my own hands, locking a door against my own daughter. A man doesn't arrive at a moment like that by accident. He arrives there one small surrender at a time. When my wife passed, I was hollowed out. I wasn't thinking straight. And when my older girl offered to step in, I didn't just accept the help. I handed over the keys to my own judgment. I let someone else open my mail. I let someone else schedule my doctors. I let someone else decide which of my old friends were welcome at my kitchen table. None of those were big moments. Every single one of them was a choice I made, or didn't make, and they added up the way water adds up against a foundation. Slow. Quiet. Until something gives. That's the thing about being taken advantage of. It almost never starts with a crime. It starts with a kindness you don't examine. It starts with a story you want to believe about your own children. It starts with not wanting to seem ungrateful, or paranoid, or like one of those old men who's hard to live with. My son-in-law understood that better than I did. He wasn't smarter than me. He was just paying closer attention to what I wanted to be true. What saved me in the end wasn't strength. I want to be honest about that. I cried in my workshop more times that year than I have in the rest of my life put together. What saved me was a small habit I'd kept my whole working life, which was to write things down when something didn't sit right. A notebook in a cigar box, a camera from a drugstore, an email sent from a public library on a Wednesday afternoon. None of that was heroic. It was just refusing to look away from what I was already seeing. If there's anything I would say to another man my age, sitting at his own kitchen table with a stack of papers in front of him, and a child smiling on the other side, it's this. Trust your children. But trust your own eyes more. The love a parent carries doesn't have to be perfect to be real, and protecting yourself is not a betrayal of that love. It is, in fact, the deepest expression of it. Because the day you let yourself be erased, you're not just losing your house or your money, you're losing the person your children will remember. And that person is the only inheritance that actually matters. I'm 70 now. I still have my house. I still have my workshop. I still have my workshop. I still have my name on every paper in this place. And every morning, I wake up in a bed I chose, in a life I chose, because I finally chose myself.